So Kingdom Hearts Missing Link is dead in the water, but over its 2 closed beta runs, we ended up learning quite a bit about this game, and what kind of story it was going to tell. While the mobile iteration of the game is no longer, I'm more than confident that the narrative of Missing Link will be repurposed at some stage later on down the track, due to how important this game seems to be. However, until Missing Link's story is properly told, I thought I would summarize up all of the important story information that we learnt about the game while it existed as a mobile title. A lot of this stuff is no doubt going to be crucial for the future of the Kingdom Hearts narrative. Missing Link is set about 4 generations after the events of Union Cross, Kingdom Hearts' earliest origin story. It takes place in the very first version of Scarlet Kylum, one that appears very different compared to the one that we see in Dark Road and Kingdom Hearts 3. The city was founded and established by Ephemer after escaping the destruction of Daybreak Town at the end of Union Cross. The narrative of this game was dubbed The Story of a Blank Era, meaning that the history that bridges from Union Cross to Dark Road was somehow forgotten and completely erased. So this title would have explained what occurred throughout that period, how Scarlet transformed into the version we see in KH3, explained how Brain would go on to become a Lushu vessel, and provide further context to help understand Kingdom Hearts 4's story. There was going to be a big focus on bloodlines and family, which would have been a first for Kingdom Hearts. The Union groups that we saw in Union Cross returned for this game, though here in Missing Link they were known as societies, and were formed from the descendants of Ephemer. Those who carried Ephemer's blood were known as the Society of Successors, while other societies that didn't have Ephemer's blood were deemed as Society of Non-Successors. We've recently discovered that there was planned to be 7 different societies. However, unlike Union Cross, the player had no choice over what group they joined. Instead, it was predetermined that they would join the Baroque Society. From the cutscenes we saw in the beta, it seems that the citizens of Scarlet don't think very highly of the Baroque Society out of the 7 total. The symbol that represents Missing Link looks very much like a dandelion, which is no doubt intentional, as those who reside in this time are descendants of Ephemer, who was part of the Dandelion group from the era of Union Cross. This group's original goal was to escape the destruction of Daybreak Town to ensure the hearts of Keyblade wielders would go on for generations to come. So there's a good chance that these spikes that are meant to be dandelion leaves likely represent the 7 societies that make up Scarlet Kylum. The city is led by a group known as the Founders, though it was never revealed to us who these characters are. As it's been around 100 years, Ephemer is likely to be dead at this point. However, he would have chosen a group to continue on leading Scarlet Kylum. Jumping back to Missing Link's symbol, I've also often thought that the 5 spokes that are at the top of this symbol above the dandelion leaves could possibly represent the Founders, in this case meaning that there would be 5 Founders. And let's say for theory's sake that the heart underneath represents the true founder, Ephemer. If we total up all of these together, that would of course make the number 13. One character that was going to have quite a big role in Missing Link was Sigurd, first introduced at the end of Union Cross, who meets Brain when he first arrives in this version of Scarlet Kylum. It looks like he's the character that's depicted leaning up against the lamppost here in this official Missing Link artwork by Nomura, and we also know that he's the narrator of the original Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer. We know that Sigurd is either a founder or works very closely with them. Either way, there is a great importance surrounding Sigurd, and Missing Link would have explained who this person is and why they're important. Because he's the narrator in the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer, there's a good chance that he'll play a certain role in Kingdom Hearts 4's story, though it's a little bit awkward now as we don't have Missing Link to provide the context on who this person is. Missing Link introduced several new characters that appeared in the beta. We have Ramus, Freya, Nept, along with these 2 mysterious whitehead characters, who no doubt would have been villains. We've also speculated that these 2 characters have connections to a younger Odin, the master of both Xehanort and Ericus from Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. Now, we've got no idea what the time gap looks like between Missing Link to Dark Road. Given that Scarlet Kylum had taken on quite the change, I'd say there's a significant amount of time between the 2. So how would it be possible for Odin to be alive in this time period when he existed during the events of Dark Road in Xehanort's earlier years? Well, that's probably what Missing Missing Link's story would have explained. Either way though, from what I understand of Missing Link's story, from the extra stuff we got from the game files, there is a good chance that these two characters here had something to do with Odin. Because there was a bloodline focus for the game, it's very possible that Nomura wanted to dive into the ancestors of already existing familiar characters in Kingdom Hearts, as we've speculated that Nept may in fact be a relative of Aqua's, and looking at Ramus, it's very possible he could be one of Lee's. Speaking of Nept, I have no doubts that this guy would have been one of my all-time favorite Kingdom Hearts characters. Just from the small amount of screen time alone that we got of Nept, I absolutely fell in love with the writing of this character. He's very unserious and laid back most of the time, which is a funny dynamic considering he's meant to be the leader of the Baroque society. But you can absolutely tell that if Nept needs to lock in, he will. In a way, he's sort of got a Jujutsu Kaisen Gojo vibe going on. It also seems that Nept knows more about who the player is than he's letting on, as he insists to touch the player's hand, possibly to get a read on them.
界のこと詳しいですよね。だったらこいつの所属先。
ああ、そうだ。君はまだ僕と握手をしてないね。
はあ、今そういうこと言います？
よし、君の身分をうちで預かろう。
Considering that this guy has the ability to dispel magic, it wouldn't surprise me if he's got some kind of psychokinesis type powers going on, but there is more to this guy than we know, along with also ensuring Freya that the player would be able to handle the Keyblade without any troubles, trusting their experience. But this is curious, as we had only just met Nept. The player in this game is likely to be the player from Union Cross, reincarnated as a new person. At the very end of Union Cross, we are given a decision: allow our heart to go to sleep, or absorb our heart into that of another's to continue our journey. Now obviously there would have been a bit more to it than just that, but we do know that our player character has ties to the era of Union Cross, as our player's Dive to Heart depicts Ephemer, Scold, and the Foretellers. We also see that the true form of the player's Keyblade is the Starlight, the Keyblade that most Keyblade wielders used throughout Union Cross. While we don't know for sure, it's heavily insinuated that the old robed person that takes baby Xehanort from the era of Missing Link into the future to the point where Dark Road begins and basically looks after him is actually our player character. The original speculation and theory on this is that our player character went on to become Xehanort, but the more likely outcome here is that we're actually Xehanort's caregiver. What does remain a mystery is how the player ended up on the shoreline of Scarlet Kylum. We've got no idea where we previously were or this character's true origins. The term drifter was introduced. A drifter is a person who's arrived from a different world. The player is known as a drifter, though it's made clear that they're not the only drifter to ever appear here in this time period. We also know that Brain could be considered a drifter too. Both drifters and Heartless appear through portals known as distortions. Now these distortions act as corridors for primarily the Heartless to travel from the Astral Dimension to Scarlet at Kylum. They seem to work very similar to how corridors of darkness work, linking the realm of darkness to other worlds. One interesting little detail that we got to see was the people that monitor the distortions around the city are seen wearing the same coat that Ansem's apprentices in Hollow Bastion wear in the future. I do wonder if Ansem the Wise was related to one of these characters. The Astral Dimension was going to be a big part of Missing Link. It's essentially our known real reality, so this was how the GPS function of the game would work. So yes, Tetsuya Nomura literally integrated our real world as a sort of world in Kingdom Hearts. It's believed by the citizens of Scala that the Heartless were originally from the Astral Dimension, though Freya explains that this is mere speculation. This was interesting to find out, as we had always thought that pure-blood Heartless derived from the realm of darkness. In order for Keyblade wielders to travel to the Astral Dimension, they used a massive portal device known as the Dive Station. The job of the Society members is to travel to the Astral Dimension and defeat Heartless to ensure they don't arrive in their world. However, they're also tasked with collecting pieces, the character statues that are used as abilities in the game. These are memory fragments from other worlds stemmed from the past, present, and future. that seem to be similar to UX's metals in nature. Now, when we're using the GPS function and in the Astral Dimension, all of the buildings that correlate to our real buildings in real life look like buildings from Scala Kylum. In fact, all of the Astral Dimension appears as if it's a version of Scala. This is due to something known as the layer effect. Basically, this dimension doesn't truly look like this, as it has an artificial skin over the top of it. So it was probably planned for later on in Missing Link's story that the true appearance of the Astral Dimension would have been revealed. You have to kind of question though, what does this place truly look like? If Keyblade wielders had to create a technology with the dive station in order to mask the true identity of the Astral Dimension, then this place truly must be almost disturbing to be in, especially considering that it's believed by the citizens of Scala that this is the true home realm of the Heartless. It also explains that this dimension connects existence to non-existence, which may insinuate that it connects to unreality quadratum. There's a good chance here that the Astral Dimension was going to be used as a plot link to link Missing Link's story up with Kingdom Hearts 4. Warp worlds also seem to be another important aspect of Missing Link, though we didn't get to learn too much about these. Looking at the main mission menu here, the next mission that was never added to the beta, Chapter 5, is going to be the chapter that explained what warp worlds were. It wouldn't be hard to guess though, these are likely how the Disney worlds and additional worlds of the game would work separate to the Astral Dimension. It's a shame that after 3 years since the initial announcement of the game, we never learned how worlds would have worked in the game, although we do know that there was going to be a lot of them, as more than 25 worlds can be found within the game files. So that's the bulk of what we learnt about Missing Link and its narrative from the 2 different builds of the game that we got during its closed beta tests. All of these plot points are enough to paint a picture that Missing Link was intended to be a fairly important game in the origin story of Kingdom Hearts. And as we've talked about, there's even more to do with the narrative that lies within the game files. Some stuff that is quite frankly even more important than any of the stuff that was publicly displayed throughout the beta. This is why I keep reiterating that there's no way that Square Enix and Tetsuya Nomura will let the narrative of this game die. There's now this big gap in the history of Kingdom Hearts that still needs to be filled in. But perhaps the biggest question of them all, what events occurred that led this time period to being completely erased from history? It is mentioned in the second trailer for Missing Link that a calamitous star arrives in Scala Kylum. Stars in this context are drifters, meaning that there is a potentially incredibly dangerous person that's just arrived in this world. I do wonder if one of the pages from the Tome of Prophecies described a calamitous star, a drifter arriving in this time period, that would end up being catastrophic to this era of time, essentially erasing it. As I mentioned, the player isn't the only drifter who arrived during this time period. It actually seems like somebody else arrived in Scala the same night that our player character did, as there is talk of an assault that happened down on the shoreline. This clearly wasn't our player, as we were too busy trying not to get strangled by a dark side Heartless. And the way that this line is worded in the second trailer makes me think that there was in fact 2 people that arrived that night. I'd say that whoever this person is, whether it could potentially be the player, though most likely not, or somebody else, they would likely be responsible for the erasure of Missing Link's history. So that's all of the story goodness we learnt about Missing Link from 2022 through to 2025. I'm sure that bits and pieces of the story will likely be changed due to the game being cancelled, but I'm absolutely certain that the core of this story will be told later on in the future. At least for now, we've got a few tidbits on what this part of the Kingdom Hearts timeline would have looked like. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video, guys. Be sure to slap that like button, it helps me out heaps, and subscribe to the channel. A big thank you to my wonderful patrons. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.